Hi, Lou here, and today I'm going to talk about history. In particular, how games that depict history are designed, because there are fundamentally two ways to do it. The first way is to design it as a puzzle. Puzzles have at least one always correct solution. And you can design the game so that players have to follow that solution in order to succeed at the game. So what you're doing is showing the players what actually happened in history. The second method is to represent the situation and then let the players determine what happens in a particular instance. In other words, a game rather than a puzzle. The important question here is which actually represents real history. Now, history to me is a combination of a great many chances and probabilities, and it's kind of like a bell curve. Sometimes what happens in history is what was most likely to happen, but most of the time it was not. Something else was most likely to happen. In other words, to be at the top of the bell curve. But most of history is somewhere along the curve, sometimes way out in the outlying places, sometimes in places which are still pretty fat, but not the fattest part of the curve. So to design a game that forces players to follow one course, to me, is, maybe I shouldn't say dishonest, but certainly confuses or misrepresents history to the players. Now, if you're designing a game strictly to teach people what actually happened, which is not the best part of history, then designing it as a puzzle makes sense. But I like to have people that I teach something to understand why things are the way they are, not merely to have a rote memorization of what's going on, which unfortunately is much more likely to happen both in high school and college now, rote memorization. But rote memorization doesn't make you able to deal with things when you haven't memorized a solution or when no solution is apparent. And to me, life is much more like a game than it is like a puzzle. So I want to design games where people can see that different things happen, and one time it may have happened, another time it didn't, and it makes a big difference. And that history, as we know it, is just one of the many possible results of the circumstances at the time. To me, that's better education, and it's more interesting as a game, because in the game you get to try different things and do different things. Those old SPI games that sometimes people complained about, including me, one reason why we complained about them is that many of them were designed essentially to be played solitaire and to force the players to a particular solution that was what actually happened in history. Again, that was not good history, but that's the way SPI did it. Nowadays, you don't run into that so much, but it's still the case that some people design their historical games to force a particular outcome, while others design them to enable a lot of different possible outcomes. And those are more educational and also more fun to play. Thanks for listening.